What is up? Welcome to the Elite Athlete Project podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Leiden.
And I'm the other guy, Albert Squires.
And today on episode 6, we're going to be talking about the injury-free athlete with our special guest, Robby Mclaughlin, who is a local gym owner here in San Luis Obispo, who's been doing some amazing things, helping a lot of people correct some imbalances, getting them super strong, and getting them in shape, working with athletes and general population. But I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let him talk about himself and tell you all the cool things so you guys are like, all right, I'm going to listen to this guy.
Thanks, Nick. Hey, guys. Like he said, my name is Robby. I own a couple gyms here. And my journey actually started quite a few years ago, learning how to rehab myself, actually. So I've been through quite a few injuries, from broken back, slip discs, separated shoulders, quite a few knee surgeries, and the list goes on. Long story short, I just kind of figured out how to maintain my fitness and strength around these injuries. And with that, it gave me the education to help others. So fixing imbalances and learning about internal versus external torque and the muscles that are correlated with that, helping a lot of people just get off their butts, basically, and try to attack these injuries and not just let them run their lives, essentially.
Right. And the one thing, too, like Robby was saying, is we don't realize how our movement quality affects these things, you know. So like one of the things Robby does is he really helps with how people are moving in the gym, and that translates over into what they're doing into their day-to-day. One of the things that I love that Robby also likes to do too is he dives into the background. He gets to know these people's lives, what they're doing day-to-day that's affecting them and creating these issues that they may be having. Anybody that's ever had any injuries, you realize how deep injuries can be and how they're not so simple all the time. You know, so how understanding how that person moves, and you know what types of stresses they're putting on their body during the day is totally crucial, you know. And but yeah, I'm super excited for this conversation we're about to have, though. I mean, it's going to be a lot of great information that you guys are going to be able to apply in multiple areas throughout the gym and stuff.
Yeah, and just so people know, with those broken backs and knees, how much you deadlift, bro?
I'm working my way to 600. Almost there.
Nice. Well, what do you think is like kind of the most important thing or the most background information that people would need to understand before we kind of start to dive into how people create the imbalances, and not only in the gym but in their life, and then how they kind of either lead to injury or stuff like that? What is the first thing that you think they kind of need to know about a little bit?
It's a great question, a great point I want to bring up. The obliques, your core. Everyone thinks of core being a good-looking six-pack, things like that, but it's much deeper than that. It goes all the way down to a muscle called the psoas major. It's a big muscle that goes from your lower back all the way into the hip flexors and all the muscles surrounding that. Now, when you don't have strong external obliques and strong lower abs, then something else is going to have to take over when you go through a movement, an exercise, a range of motion, even putting the dishes away in the upper cabinet. Now, when you do not have that stability and mobility equals range of motion under tension, when you don't have that, something, like I said, is going to have to take over, which will then cause imbalances. When you have these imbalances over and over and over again, not just in the gym, but in your day-to-day life, then that's when you start to get these aches and pains. And then you're essentially going to blame it on the gym. Like, it got hurt picking up the weights off the rack in the gym, but it actually has been occurring for the last however long, couple months of putting the dishes away incorrectly.
How long would you say it takes for someone to create an imbalance?
Oh, man. Not too long, I don't think. I think when people get used to doing something, I don't want to use the word lazy, but when people just don't realize they're sitting a certain way or driving a certain way, using their phone a certain way. Maybe when you're talking on the phone a lot for your job, your shoulder rolls forward quite a bit. And then you head to the gym and you try to do a bench press, and your shoulder just automatically kind of rolls forward a little bit. Now, that's not the bench press's fault. That's not the coach's fault that assigned the bench press. That is the fact that you weren't aware enough to put your shoulders in a good position all day long. I know that sounds tedious and exhausting, but that's just how it happens. When we get lazy in our day-to-day movement, it's going to correlate when we start adding the exciting stuff like an overhead press or a kettlebell swing. That's the fun stuff. That's the stuff that's going to get us to the next level. But we do have to remember all the mundane stuff we do day to day. That stuff counts as well.
For sure.
I mean, I think that's a huge component because a lot of people want to, especially athletes, like it's like, all right, what's going on in the gym? Because this is all that matters. This is what is directly relating over to performance. And yes, that does matter, but there's so much more kind of behind the scenes of, I'm on TikTok all day like this, and then I go try to, do a pull down or something, and then you're just your shoulders are compromised in a different position or something, right?
Totally. And I'll even go one step beyond that is, what kind of pillow do you have? Or how do you sleep at night? And that's 6, 7, 8, 9 hours right there of maybe holding a position that's not going to be too beneficial for you in the natural movement that we go through.
So third or fourth of your day is spent in the bed. So, I mean, your positioning is crucial. One of the things I like too is that a lot of people don't ever consider, and I know I didn't until like Nick helped me with it, was understanding the psoas and how that if this thing doesn't loosen up, it doesn't matter how much work we're doing around it. Essentially, this thing's going to keep pulling you back into that positioning that essentially puts your hips in a bad position, right? It causes anterior pelvic tilt, I believe, when it's tight.
Absolutely. So when that pelvic bone is rolled forward,
which most people have.
Oh, absolutely. So ladies, if you wear high heels a lot, or anyone in general who sits a lot, when you go to stand up, your pelvic bone is so tight from your knee to the hip, and then from the hip through the psoas, it's kind of pulling that hip forward. And then you don't realize it when you're standing up, but you have this huge anterior pelvic tilt pulling that hip forward. You go try to move some weights around, go put the laundry away. You're already at a disadvantaged position.
Right. And this, just to give a little visual for those people that are listening in, psoas attaches to your spine, comes forward and attaches to your hips. So where you feel that hip bone, that's where it attaches. So when this gets tight, this is pulling those hips slightly forward. That's why those that often have tight hips, they'll think, oh, I need to roll and stretch my quads or my hips more, but it's the psoas that's essentially pulling your hips back into that positioning. And this is super common for a lot of us. We're sitting down basically most of our life. So this thing's always shortened, and that's one of the things that I feel, I mean, even me as a coach didn't even know for the longest time,
Totally. It's how you stand on the field. Are you squeezing your butt? Are you squeezing your abs when you're standing there? If not, chances are your pelvic bone's kind of rolling forward a little bit.
Yep. And then even like, because when I actually went to Nick and got help with this was when I was powerlifting. So I'm squatting over 400 pounds, and my low back's tight. And I'm like, how do I have a weak core with, this much weight that I'm doing every day? And Nick was like, well, it's probably your obliques and your psoas is probably tight, had me sit on the ball and crap. And I mean, my back started feeling better.
You're like,
oh, wow.
Weird.
Yeah.
So tightness isn't a form of strength. I want to make sure everyone's aware of that. If you have a tight muscle, then it's not always a form of strength. So just because it's tight doesn't mean that you're safe.
Right.
So tightness is a form of weakness most of the time.
So how would you go about strengthening and loosening a muscle there, Robby? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people with some tight hamstrings.
Oh, yeah. Lots and lots of tight hammies
over
out
here,
there.
And they're trying to sprint.
Oh, shoot.
Pulling hammies left and right, but, who's this guy?
So, hamstrings. Let's take hamstrings, for example. It all starts with, I'm going to say this over and over and over again. It's all going to start from those external obliques. If you could breathe into your diaphragm, bypassing the chest and lungs and the trap breathing, breathe in past that and into your belly, making a 360-degree pressure of that core, not just forward, not even just out to the side, but even in your lower back. Breathing into your lower back, it's a skill. It's hard to do. But if you can master that, and you could work on that, now you could start to focus on fixing other stuff. So you're going to breathe in and brace your external obliques. And then you can go ahead and do those good old-fashioned hammy stretches.
Yeah.
But you're only going to go as far before that core, those obliques, collapse. So it's not going to be as far as you think. I can guarantee everyone can bend over and touch their toes.
Yeah.
But if you do that, creating mobility, remember mobility is strength applied with range of motion, not just range of motion. Everyone's going to say, oh, I can't get my hands past my knees or luckily to the mid shin or so. But that's okay. Also with that, I mean, how far are you reaching with your shoulder rotated forward? All these little things are accountable, basically.
What would you say are the biggest compensations people have around their hamstrings? Like where do people typically like compensate?
Quads. I see quads and lower back quite a bit. So when you go into something called external torque, or not rotation but torque, the lower lumbar, the erector.
What does that mean?
So
for viewers.
So
you guys over here talking rocket science. Yeah. All right. It's external torque. You guys got it? Cool.
So basically torque, it's just pressure. That's all it is. So if you take a towel and you wrench it, it's a lot stronger. It's like, you know how you're about to whip a buddy?
Yep.
Yeah. Like that. You wrench it up, or wrenching the water out of a towel, that's torque.
Yeah.
Now that towel's a lot stronger versus just taking a towel and trying to pull it that way, because then it's going to stretch.
Yep.
So that's kind of the difference here. Now we go into external torque. We'll say your hips. Simply, very, very simply, just take your feet and try to spread the earth with your feet. That's it. Now you're going to try to roll onto the ankle, or your knee might rotate out. That's not what we're looking for. That's called displacement. So when a joint moves, when you're trying to apply torque, that's displacement. We want to keep everything static. So you want to root your toes into the ground. Make sure your ankles are stacked right over the arches of your foot or over your heel. And then your knee stacked right on top of your ankle. And then try to apply that torque, that tension going out. Now you have your glute medius turned on, and now you're ready to go.
Stabilizing the knee, everything with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you, I hate to say this, but there's some fitness industries out there that say knees out, knees out, knees out, knees out.
I was just going to say that.
So you could, knees out is fine if it's over the middle toe. That's it. Just keep it there. Keep it general. It's about how much torque you put on those hips.
Yeah.
So what's the key to creating this torque?
So I have in my classes, there's a lot of people that are just coming into fitness, and that's amazing. That's great.
Yes.
But they might not have the know-withal about how to use a few muscles.
Right.
Some of us have grown up just doing the bicep curls, doing the lat pull downs, and we have some muscle activation. So
for the longest time.
Yeah. So we kind of know, okay, I know what a lat is. I'll turn that muscle on for you, no problem, when I go to do a pull-up or whatever it is. But some of these amazing individuals that want to come and start their fitness journey, they just don't know how to do that.
Right.
And so we have to use sometimes a tool, a band, or a PVC pipe to say, hey, pull this apart. Do you feel that muscle back there? And now we can go through the exercises. And we have to shorten the range of motion quite a bit, and that's totally fine.
For sure.
Everything is scalable, and you could still apply just as much intensity. And you still want to, if you want to lose fat, gain muscle, whatever it is, everything is scalable to that individual's needs.
Right.
So it goes back to what's the intention of the movement, right? Like, what are you doing with it? Are you just throwing weight around to throw weight around? Or are you actually trying to get better with something behind it? Right?
Totally. Every day should have an intent. Every day should have a goal and a step-by-step process on how to get there.
And you can create internal and external torque from the different joints. So upper body you can, and lower body. And the key with creating internal and external torque is your contact with whatever apparatus or ground. So if your hands, how your hands are coming in contact with the bar, that's how things can start. Same thing when we're squatting or doing things from the ground. How are our feet? Where's our weight distribution in those feet when it comes to that ground, and how we're grabbing with those toes and everything. Like he's talking about how I used to be one of these people to say the knees out, when technically if that toe is locked in and you're creating that rooting into the ground, that knee will never be able to come out because you've created that connection. It's often those people that are losing the connection with the ground that aren't able to feel the sensation of that internal external torque and feel that sensation of all their muscles firing off together, working together, and then you being in this path was essentially when you're squatting. I noticed that when I started rooting, I was able to get deeper in my squats.
Yeah.
I was also able to feel all my muscles fire off. My hamstrings finally turn on. Oh, I could actually feel my glutes at the bottom of my squat, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's super important, you know. We'll post some things up so you guys can kind of see what this rooting is. And everything, but like he's saying, I mean, this is the key to movement efficiency, is understanding how to create internal and external torque.
what we're talking about is awareness, right? You're talking about body awareness and what you're able to do rather than just kind of going through the motion or just trying to, like I said, trying to just do the most amount of weight possible. You're trying to create that tension, create the intention behind it.
Absolutely.
With what you're doing. So, and this is kind of what leads to those imbalances when we forget about that intention behind the movement. Like, oh, I'm not rooting my feet into the ground, so I'm having my glute med's not turning all the way on my squats. So now my hips internally rotating, my knees internally rotating, and now I have a low ankle bone on the left side. Oh, all of a sudden for my athletes out there, I go to take a cut on my left foot on the field, snap, there goes the ACL, but it's you've not taken the time, I guess I'm saying, in the gym and throughout your daily life to be aware about how your body's moving, which then ultimately can lead to those injuries, what we're talking about here. Yeah. What I think is the biggest thing. I have one question for you. Mm-hmm. How do you breathe into your back? Because I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I can do front and sides, but how do you do that?
It's hard, man. It's hard. It takes some time. So whenever I'm coaching, like I'm trying to do that. So whenever I'm yelling, 3, 2, 1, I'm always trying to breathe into, you don't ever see me too often breathe in your chest and your traps and your shoulders. I don't want to. Now, traps is a great muscle to train. It's got a purpose. But what about the mid trap? What about the low trap? Those muscles get ignored sometimes because we breathe into our lungs so much and our shoulders rise up, or you're stressed out all day. And then it just makes it even harder to, like you said, breathe into the diaphragm, breathe into the low back, because you're so used to the stressful environment of shoulders rising up. Or maybe you go to...
Oh, should we dive into... man.
The mouth breathers?
Yeah, well, I was thinking parasympathetic and sympathetic response and stuff.
Totally.
Dude, that might be another full-blown podcast on how your movement and what muscles you
Tune in next week. No,
cut. But yeah, I mean, I think it's that sort of stuff's super important around how, like, oh, I'm stressed out. What does everyone do? Kind of go up to the shoulders. All of a sudden I have tight traps, and people don't understand why when all of a sudden I had a pinched shoulder when I'm like this all single day.
Right? We have a couple of techniques that we do to try to train that style breathing pattern. Yeah. A couple of things that I picked up from a mastermind, Julian Pinal of Strong Fit. It was a mentor of his. I was our mentee.
I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. Yeah.
Followed him around a lot. Basically, he showed me what the oblique opener is, and that is basically lifting weights, and how I think of it, lifting weights with your diaphragm. And so you lay down on the ground and you get your legs extended out, and you put a kettlebell or a weight or something on your belly, underneath your belly button. And I like to also put a band underneath my back, a very, very thin band.
Oh, that's...
And so when you breathe in to the kettlebell, essentially, you're breathing, making a big old belly full of air, not just forward, but out to the side, and then into the ground as well. So you got to get that lower lumbar into the ground. And you can have a buddy try to pull that band out away from one side. So kind of...
Gonna do that tomorrow?
Yeah, let's do it. Absolutely. And then to create intent or awareness of your breathing pattern, you're going to exhale and try to keep that kettlebell right where it is. So it's going to rise on the inhale, and then you can kind of pull it down onto you or have a buddy push down on it as you exhale. So when you exhale, your stomach kind of shrinks up a little bit. Now on your exhale, you're going to fight that pressure. And without that kettlebell moving, you're going to take another breath. And another breath, and see how many you can get done.
Oh, wow.
I do this all the time, and I could probably get 4 or 5 in. So before I get like a cramp in my obliques or something like that.
So I'm gonna get a half of one in.
Yeah. If you do it good, you shouldn't be able to get too many.
So basically, anyone who has any back injuries or anything like that, or not injuries, but like, oh, I did lift, I hurt my back, it's probably because they're not creating that pressure in their lower abs, external obliques, and creating that, what'd you call it, the belt thing you were talking about, blowing air into your whole diaphragm.
Oh yeah,
what did you? There you go.
Yeah. So yes and no. They could be doing that, but maybe they're going past that. So if they're bracing and they're still gonna go, they breathe into their belly and then they keep continuing on. So that's why a lot of times in a workout that's high intensity, We call it a burner or maybe a Metcon, metabolic conditioning. And there's deadlifts in it. And deadlifts are usually the barbells on the ground and you have bumper plates on the bar. Now, a bumper plate is about 7.5 inches, makes the bar about 7.5 inches from the ground.
Okay.
Now, if you test everyone's range of motion in a, what's it called? A dead bug position. You get them on the ground and you breathe into their belly and see how far they can move their limbs.
Yeah.
Now, not too many people are going to have the range of motion or the mobility, range of motion under tension in order to get them to 7.5 inches off the ground without something taking over, something cheating them to get that low. So, if you create that internal tension in your obliques, that bracing, and you hinge over, maybe your hands get to 9.5 inches off the ground. And then they say, well, the bar's right there. I'm almost there. So they roll their shoulders forward. And maybe they round their back just a smidge or their knees shoot forward just a little bit to get to that bar. Now they go pick it up. Now they got down, not a problem. But they go to pick it up, and that's when we start to create these bad habits.
Yeah.
Nice. So what he's saying is that overall, if you continue to do these movements these ways, then you're going to get hurt, and then you're not going to be playing on the field.
I know it's fun to do what everyone else is doing. Like they want to deadlift 500 pounds off the ground.
Yeah.
They want to back squat to below parallel. They want to do. There's these. I think powerlifting and maybe things like CrossFit, like these range of motion standards, are kind of messing with people.
100%.
We don't need to get to parallel in order to get a good response muscular wise. You don't need to get there. You need to go to where you need to go today, and maybe in 2-3 weeks you can get a little bit deeper, a little bit further overhead, something like that. You're going to work on your range of motion step by step to get there.
That's so important. Like, I could have avoided probably so many little nicks and injuries and things if it wasn't, throw 400 pounds on your back and squat all the way down. And if it would have been like, well, I can't get that far in a safe and structured and while maintaining tension, I'm still going to get the response that we're looking for, which is developing some strength and power in those muscles, but I'm not putting myself at injury at that point.
But man, I've seen the videos of Cal Poly weight room. People get hype in there. Man. So
it's like, a little hard.
How are you going to not do that when everyone's get down? Yeah. That's hard to do, but I mean, long run stuff, right?
In the weight room, bracing is probably one of the most important things, though, for sure, if you want to stay injury free. I mean, it just locks in that core. It's like you're saying. I mean, I know for the longest time, an easy thing to kind of recognize too is where are you breathing. So when you're breathing, put your hand on where you feel that expansion. A lot of us, like Robby was saying, is a lot of us are basically open mouth breathers. We're short breath, and it only gets to our chest. So it's here instead of when we breathe in, it should go down, and you should feel an expansion in your stomach. Your stomach should be opening and closing essentially all the time. So if these things aren't happening and you're noticing where your breath is, what are some other things they could do to work on their breath work a little bit?
Oh, man.
The bracing is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's just a day-to-day thing.
Day-to-day thing.
Yeah, breathing through your nose. Don't breathe through your mouth.
Yes.
You want to relax your neck as much as you can. And sometimes, this might sound silly, but if you flex your chest and you flex your lats at the same time, it's kind of hard to breathe into your lungs.
I never wrote that down. That's actually,
Yeah, I think, because I get this question too, not this specific question, but like, how do I fix this? Or what do I do to fix this? And it's like, well, there's no like one specific exercise that's going to just, you do it and I got it, boom, I'm fixed. It's what has always worked for me when I'm trying to change something that I've done for 10, 15 years.
Oh man, habits.
It's a constant awareness in my head. Like, I used to heel strike when I would run a little bit. And it wasn't like, I just did like 1 or 2 drills. It was like every day I was like, okay, am I walking on the pads of my feet? When I'm jogging, am I on the balls of my feet? When I'm sprinting, am I on? It was just all the time awareness around what I'm doing. When I have my traps up here, it was all the time like, where are my traps at during the day? Where are my traps at? When I'm benching, when I'm doing anything. It's just, I think for a lot of you out there, you need to understand that it's not always, yes, there are going to be some great exercises that are going to really help you out. But it's, again, going back to what are you doing outside of the gym and outside of practice, outside of training, that is going to help you become that better athlete, that better individual, start to become more and more pain-free with that.
One thing I did just think of, wouldn't you, to practice this, it might not be super beneficial around the house or something like that, but if you want to practice around the gym, grab a weightlifting belt. Now, put that weightlifting belt around your belly button, kind of high. Not so much down by your waist, because if I see that around the gym, I'm just going to basically yell at you. I'm going to come over and take that.
He will absolutely not do that. He would smile, come over.
Before we dive into this, can we explain to people how the belt actually works? Because I know I was confused until I read into it, because we think it's the back that's actually supporting us when it's not.
Correct.
The point of the belt is the actual buckle in the front. And like he was talking about, when you're properly bracing, you're actually pushing against that belt. That belt's acting as a support to help with that low back, so you stay in line, you stay tight.
A couple of great things about the belt. Don't wear it all the time. Don't get used to not wearing it. Now, what I'm about to give a tip for is practicing your breathing habits. If you just want to feel your diaphragm work, put a belt on. Don't cinch it down super tight, but put that belt on and just feel your breath push against that belt all around you. Now, this is just practice. This is not before you go throw some heavy weight around. But if you want to walk around with it while creating that tension against the belt, that's a great way to try to have that awareness of how your diaphragm works.
Ooh, I like that. And then one thing, too, just to capitalize on what Robby said a little earlier, the key is breathing through the nose. So the difference between breathing through your mouth and your nose is the length of breath. My mouth is bigger, so I could take shorter breaths. I don't have to breathe as deeply. It's not as long. So we get those short breaths. This also can affect your temper, your mood, and everything. But breathing through your nose. Now, because I can't get as much oxygen in, I have to take a longer breath. Now that forces me to take a longer and be more aware of my breath, slows down my heart rate. So again, too, it helps you to relax, but also helps you to kind of get that longer breath, so it gets down to that stomach and not into the chest as much.
And a little tip on that, it also helps you recover very quickly and gets you ready for the next rep, next set, whatever it may be.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot into nasal versus mouth breathing out there.
Yeah, it starts getting really primal really quick.
Yeah. So we have breathing, practicing your breathing. What would you say are like 2 to 3 other exercises that you would just like, if you could program them and they would do it, that everyone, you'd want to see everyone basically doing?
For breathing?
No, it just in general around like just the most common like imbalances and things you typically see, or things wrong when you're walking around the gym. Like what are like probably 2 to 3 corrective exercises or things to help people become aware of them.
Got it. So
maybe for athletes too.
Okay, for athletes. All right. So the first one I'm going to say lunging. So why I say lunging? So I'm going to be able to see what your foot's doing, see what your knee's doing, see what your hip's doing. And if you have the mobility to keep a somewhat upright torso. Now, a lunge is an exaggerated walk or even a run. So you want to have that forward tilt. But if you collapse forward, maybe if you're holding onto a weight, and if you collapse too far forward, you just don't have the core stability to do so. Or your hips are so freaking tight that it's pulling your upper body forward, or you don't have the balance. But everything's going to come from the foot. If you have plantar fasciitis, this is not a reason to go get insoles in your shoes. I want to make sure everyone knows that. Plantar fasciitis, or flat feet, or whatever it may be, you have to create the strength in your foot. Now I'm going to be able to see that when people are lunging or squatting or jumping. That internal rotation, not tension, not torque, internal rotation of that plantar fasciitis is taking your knees and caving it in, and then it's going to cause that anterior pelvic tilt. So all these little things that I'm looking at when I have some do some lunging.
Starting from the feet, affecting the hips.
Absolutely.
Crazy.
Yeah, their feet you got to think of your feet as talons on a bird. And the other one would be a sandbag carry. Now this is pretty easy to kind of create at home in the garage, or if the gym has it, maybe you have a D-ball or something like that. But grab something heavy that you can give a big old bear hug to. When you do that, you grab your wrist and put your hands right around your belly button. Now what this is going to do is give you a little bit of a tilt forward. And I want you to give it a little tiny bit of a dip in the hips. Now this is going to load up your glutes. Now from here, just go on a walk. See how far you can walk before your lower back blows up. Now remember, when I say lower back blown up, that's not an injury. That's just it's just irritated lower back. And what I want you to do at that point is breathe into those external obliques to take the pain away from your lower back and give it to your core. Give it to those strong muscles that help support you. And the last thing I would say is, if you're an athlete that's having problems with imbalances, you don't always need a barbell. A barbell weight is on the outside of your hands. You could still do a clean. You could still do a snatch. You could still do whatever you can do with a barbell. You can do with a sandbag. Mm-hmm. I want you to imagine or just remember, what in life do we have with weight is on the outside of our hands?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I'm dumping a lineman on his back, it's inside
it's
right
inside
here.
your hands, yeah.
It's not out here.
When you run over somebody, you're coming in, tighten it up.
Yeah. When you're taking someone down, whatever it may be, when you're pushing someone off you.
It's from the center.
It's all inside your hands, right?
Yeah.
And so a sandbag kind of simulates that pretty well. Take a sandbag, do some presses with it, do some tosses with it, do some cleans with it, do some overhead presses with it, do some bench press with it. Get used to that weight on the inside of your hands. You're going to realize really quick, you're not as strong as what you thought you were.
You're not. No, that's good. That's a super good point. I mean, so I think it just brings it back around to like, yeah, shit, you're right. Like, I'm not using a barbell pressing someone off of me.
Barbell is super like efficient, right?
Yeah.
A running back running away from you is not too efficient for you. But grabbing onto a sandbag or something, that kind of relates a little bit more.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's awesome. No, thank you so much for being on here. Is there anything else you wanted to say? Ask them any questions? Or anything else you want to leave? Any word of advice or anything to anyone?
Athletes, I just want you to not get so hyped up on the cool, exciting Instagram lifts and exercises and what this guy's doing across the country. Focus on you, focus on your imbalances, and when you do attack those imbalances, you will never have a plateau in your training. You could always keep increasing, whether it be intensity or weight, speed, whatever that may be. Focus on you, focus on where you need to go.
That's awesome,
man. That was. Yeah, thanks for coming on, Robby.
Yeah.
That was fun.
My pleasure. It was fun.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right. We will see you in the next episode. Peace, y'all. Thanks for joining in. Oh, follow us. Follow Headstrong. Do that stuff. Swipe up feature. Click here.
And then our Patreon is no.
And you can go to buy our local. No, thank you. But his is what's your Instagram though? Because people are probably gonna want to follow you because you're smart and stuff.
Yeah.
At Headstrong Fit.
Headstrong Fit. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And if you send him your lunge videos, he'll break them down for you. All right, guys. We'll see you. Thank you so much.
Later.